What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with another podcast. What's going on in pop culture right now? All music this week. 6 new drops to get into. New K-pop from IVE and Tomorrow Together. Troye Sivan, third album. Bad Bunny, new album. He said he was taking a year off. He didn't. New album from Offset as well. And Holly Humberstone. Very excited to get into all that. Of course, make sure you subscribe, youtube.com/nostalgiapod, linktree.com/nostalgiapod. See the links below. Get the pod any way you can. Just get it. See the links. Do the thing. Also, make sure you see the links below to follow the best of 2023 Spotify playlist. My favorite songs of the year, updated every week. Let's get into it. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of IVE's first EP, IVE Mine. Their second release of 2023, following their debut album, IVE earlier this year. Their second release of the year, of course, following a number of big singles in last year. IVE have very quickly become one of the biggest and most successful fourth-gen K-pop groups. Really dominant, especially over in Korea, where they're huge sellers. And that's despite the fact that they are signed to Starship Entertainment. They are not signed to a big 4 K-pop label, which just makes their rapid ascendance and continued success all that more impressive because they just have less backing behind it than some of their contemporaries. And their last album, IVE, which I reviewed, youtube.com/nostalgiapod, check that out. I thought that was a pretty successful album, kind of continuing the trend of what they had done with their big singles. If you think about IVE to this point, year and a half into their run, basically, their big hits are all pretty similar in the sense that these are big anthemic pop songs, not so much like vocally wowing, but really, I think, big and really fitting a specific vibe. Songs like Love Dive and After off this last album, I Am and Kitsch. They got hits for a reason, and they're kind of filling a slightly different mold than their contemporaries, right? I mean, there's a lot of female K-pop groups right now doing something successfully. New Jeans, LE SSERAFIM, aespa. But IVE really not competing in the same lane as any of them, which I think is great for all these groups. And IVE Mine, I think, is interesting because it's their first real departure as a group sonically from what they had been doing. This is not nearly as anthemic overall. IVE Mine, 6-song EP, 17 minutes. The lead single off this, Off the Record. Catchy bass line, but really I think it's much simpler, straightforward singing. It's straight up just a new sound. They just haven't really made a song like this before. Now, I don't necessarily think it's the most wowing or interesting song, but I guess it's notable in the fact that it's a little different. The big music video song, title track off IVE Mine, would be Baddie, which again, it's a big song. This is definitely designed to be a big single, but it's a different style of single. It's not as anthemic as their other stuff. Baddie, it's basically a trap beat, and the hook on this is basically like a hook you'd expect from NCT 127 or something. I think if anything, the rapping in the verses is really awesome in Baddie, and not something we've gotten too much from IVE to this point. I think the I'm a Baddie chorus itself, though, it's a bit I think annoying. It's a bit more playful though than the average NCT 127 hook. I think it's better than some of those, which can be really grating after a while. I like the whistle on the beat at the end. Pretty solid song. Again, I just kind of appreciate that it's a different spin from IVE. IVE really kind of spreading their wings and doing a little bit of different stuff here. Again, either way, really modest chorus, despite the fact that it has big production. I guess that's kind of similar to their bigger hits from before. Holy Moly, I really like the vibe on the production overall, the way the drum hits. Kind of like a messy composition, though. I guess you could compare this to 11 compositionally, but I don't think it's quite as good. It's probably my least favorite song on the album. OTT, though. This one really stood out to me. Really fast drum tempo. Really like the bass on this. Wonyoung was the sole lyricist on this. Very impressive to see that from a new group, of course. But vocally, especially in the beginning, very reminiscent of Doja Cat. I just love the vocal performance on this. Again, something new from IVE. It's pretty cool. And then the last song, Payback, and I kind of like the outro verse overall. I like that bass tempo. So it's, again, short and sweet K-pop EP. As you probably know by now, these EPs don't give you a whole lot of time to really get into them, so they have to kind of grab you quickly. And I don't think this really stands up to some of the past success of IVE, but it's clearly a statement of intent from IVE and Starship that they are not to be put in a box and probably have a lot more of a well-rounded sound to come. So hopefully the next full-length album continues to show this level of sonic diversity, and I think keep IVE going. Because not necessarily need to switch up what they're doing given the immense success that they've had, but I do think it is a bit more interesting if they had more variety as they're starting to demonstrate. But let me know, how did you feel about IVE's first EP, IVE Mine? And for more K-pop reviews, more music reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Tomorrow Together's third album, The Name Chapter Freefall. Yes, TXT is back. Hasn't been that long. They released an EP earlier in the year. Of course, TXT, the first boy group to debut on Big Hit following BTS. Of course, they have other peers in that regard now. And TXT has, I think quickly, perhaps quietly, become a very successful group. Of course, they have a #1 album in the US. They performed at Lollapalooza last year. They are increasingly very popular and very noticeably have started to branch out into this greater pop music this year. Look no further than this album, which features, of course, their collaboration song with the Jonas Brothers, Do It Like That. And they took it one step further with their song Back for More, featuring Brazilian superstar Anitta. Back for More on this album only features the TXT version. Anitta is absent, but that to me is kind of the most interesting thing about TXT right now. TXT and Big Hit and Hybe and all of them. TXT seems to be a vehicle for Hybe collaborating with Western music artists, and that's very interesting to me. Thinking back across other companies, artists that are super mainstream but never really branched out and did much collaboration at all, TXT is clearly not doing that. They are making mainstream pop, and as a result, there's a lot more English on this album. I think, frankly, the Name Chapter Freefall from TXT, it's a bit bland for my taste. I think it's a bit sanitized. Perhaps that's by design to target Western audiences. I'm not sure. I think what's nice about them is when they're, I think, on a good song, TXT has really fun vocal harmonies when they sing together. I do really enjoy that. And, the vocal melodies on a song like Happily Ever After, for example, off this new album, the vocal melodies on that are really good. They're an impressive group vocally, but I think just production-wise, this was pretty dull to me. Like, thinking about, Growing Pain, you hit the first track, you have, I think, nice guitar, nice drums, and there's a fair amount of guitar on this album, but I don't think the songs really rise up to me. Chasing That Feeling, which has an English version at the end here, kind of confirming my point. Chasing That Feeling, I think it's designed to be catchy, right? Big drums, kind of loud song, so it's presented. But to me, the chorus is just kind of weak. I think it falls a bit flat. Back for More, whether it's with Anitta or just TXT, I think the vocals are very expressive. The melodies are actually kind of sticky. You have some guitars. And honestly, and I actually don't mean this as an insult, it actually kind of reminds me of a Maroon 5 song, like a good Maroon 5 song. But do we really want our K-pop groups to be sounding like Maroon 5? I'd rather them sound like a K-pop group. Stick to their own sound and values, right? It feels like it's very compromised, the sound right now. Skipping Stones, it's a rock song, guitars and drums, but don't really think the performance is anything too special. So, yeah, it's like on one hand, it's cool that TXT, who already are so successful, are so open to making collabs with big artists. I mean, making a song with the Jonas Brothers and putting it on your album as well, I think it goes a long way. They're not the first K-pop groups to collaborate with Western artists, of course, but it seems like it's kind of the big focus here. I'm curious how much of this is label manufactured. Of course, Hybe has a big, Western presence at this point, of course. Scooter Braun actually in command on that side of things. Not really too sure. But yeah, TXT, like, I think the EP from earlier this year was stronger efforts than this, to be honest. But I'm sure we'll be hearing from them soon. They're a very prolific group. And I'll be curious to see if this trend of collabing with others and making more English music and seemingly more Western inspired music from the production side of things, I'll be curious if that continues with future releases, but I don't think we'll have too much long a wait to figure that out. But let me know, how'd you feel about TXT's third album, The Name Chapter, Free Fall? For more K-pop reviews, more music reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Offset's second album, Set It Off. Offset's second album is finally here after being delayed nearly a year following the tragic and, of course, unexpected death of Takeoff, Migos member, like Offset. So, this was a long time coming. Similarly, we got the Quavo solo album, the second one of those as well, Rocket Power, just a few months ago. So we knew that we were going to get these two in quick order here. The second round of Migos solo albums, unfortunately, again, without Takeoff being able to contribute to this. And, I think this one was pretty interesting to me. I think probably more interesting going in than the Quavo album, which I also reviewed. Check it out, youtube.com/nostalgiapod. The Offset album was interesting because, of course, Offset had, fallen out with Take and Quavo before everything went down. We had the Quavo and Takeoff Unkin Pew release right before Takeoff passed. Offset, due to some personal things, so we know, and of course, big falling out with quality control and management and whatnot. All that's resolved. This is now a release strictly on Universal Music Group, and I've been curious to hear exactly how much Offset gets into how he feels about how Migos abruptly ended, both before and after, of course, Takeoff passed, two very different reasons in that sense, and how he feels about things now, because, of course, Quavo and Offset really awesomely bury the hatchet publicly and perform Bad and Bougie at the BET Awards earlier this year as a tribute to Takeoff. And I think that was really great to see, just from, fans of Migos, fans of Quavo, fans of Offset, to see that whatever squabbles they had in the past, and they definitely had something, they were able to at least put that aside for, the greater good of their sworn, or their fallen brother, So I wasn't expecting Set It Off to be like a super bitter album. But you do get, I think, some interesting moments of clarity from Offset where he talks about how he's feeling about things, feeling like he was perhaps alienated, when things were going on, and painted as the bad guy and stuff. You don't get it all too much, and I think Set It Off as an album, his first solo album, Father of Four, was definitely the strongest of the three first set of Migos solo albums. I actually think Set It Off, I don't quite like it as much as Quavo's Rocket Power overall, but it's kind of splitting hairs here, because Offset, I think, as everyone knows, Offset was truly like the bedrock of the best Migos songs. The Offset verse, often the very best part of the Migos songs. As much as we love a great Quavo hook, especially back in 2016, 2017, you needed those Offset verses to hit for those songs to hit the high ceiling that they had. I just kind of rediscovered my love for Brown Paper Bag off the first Culture album. Offset just spitting fire as soon as the song starts. Offset was really the only one to do that consistently. Of course, the Takeoff verses, everyone really, I think, consensusly agreed following his passing that the Takeoff verses perhaps were some of the best verses often. He had probably the best pen. But, man, Offset's flow and I think just consistency really always impressed me. and I've been a big fan of his. And he's demonstrated his ability to find success without Quavo and Takeoff. Look no further than the Without Warning project with 21 Savage and Metro. Of course, Ric Flair Drip, the biggest Offset song, the biggest solo song from any Migos member. So, I think the album, again, I didn't have really high expectations for it. I was just kind of interested about like those moments of clarity, which you do get in parts. I think Say My Grace kind of interestingly has some of the most lyrical moments from Offset, despite the fact that it's also presented as a big banger song featuring Travis Scott, one of the better Travis features we've had in some time. I think a lot of these are big flexing songs or big boasting songs, or almost like manifesto type songs, like the first song On the River. I think Don Toliver, Worth It, that song's all right. Future, pretty good on Broad Day, good chemistry. Of course, we get 2 Cardi B collabs, of course, Offset and Cardi, one of the, if not the biggest power couple in hip hop after Jay-Z and Beyonce, I suppose. I haven't really loved any Offset Cardi collabs. They have a handful at this point, both on Offset's albums, some other songs as well. I think they're all right. Like they never really like completely wowed me with any of these collabs. But of course, Cardi has a high floor, and between Freaky and Jealousy, I think Jealousy, the second one, is definitely the stronger of the two. Cardi, I think, is quite exceptional on that. We can definitely add that into just the amazing feature run she continues to consistently be on, despite the fact that it's now been close to 6 years since her debut album came out back in 2018. Of course, we had Shake It and Tomorrow Too, and I think Jealousy is not as big as those songs, but it's still a really good performance from Cardi and her and Offset. On that, I think it might actually be my favorite song they have together, to be honest. I think the Lotto feature, fine as can be, they have pretty good chemistry there. Some interesting lyrical moments on like Night Vision and Blame It on Set, but I think overall it's all pretty solid, but also kind of unmemorable, unremarkable overall. And I think the most memorable thing to me between these 2 Migos solo albums we just got, the Quavo album and the Offset album, I think Patty Cake off the Quavo album was most memorable just because Takeoff was absolutely amazing on that, in a posthumous performance, of course. That's probably the one thing I'm going to take away from this. But thankfully, Quavo and Offset seem to be able to move forward and are still doing pretty well for themselves, despite the fact that Migos is no more. I'm definitely holding out hope that one day Quavo and Offset can unite and do something together. Or of course, they won't use the Migos name, but these guys, and this was true when Takeoff was alive, they are certainly better together than they ever have been apart, even if they can do pretty well for themselves when they're solo or working with others. So hopefully one day Quavo and Offset are able to do something. It's obviously probably too soon to expect that. Hopefully one day, though. But yeah, let me know, how did you feel about Offset's second solo album, Set It Off? And for more rap reviews, more music reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Holly Humberstone's debut album, Paint My Bedroom Black. Holly Humberstone, rising star in pop music, literally the winner of the Brit Award for the Rising Star back in 2022. Holly, of course, from the UK. Paint My Bedroom Black, out on UMG. She, to me, is absolutely one of the next big things in pop music, and that's despite the fact that she's been very clear in her lack of interest in becoming a big pop star. She's openly discussed her kind of uneasiness with going on some writing trips to LA and working with writers that were clearly trying to engineer a hit out of her, and her feeling uncomfortable and uninterested in doing that. Despite all that, this girl has hits. Her debut EP, Can You Afford to Lose Me, came out just last year, so there's not a lot of music yet. Holly herself, only 23 years old, probably got a lot of fans in the US as doing some opening act work on Olivia Rodrigo's Sour Tour relatively recently. But man, I think if you just look at, this small body of work to this point, there's a lot to like and a lot, I think, to latch on to. I think the song Scarlet off Can You Afford to Lose Me really stands out as an early highlight. And there's a lot of interesting songs on Paint My Bedroom Black. And Holly, again, she says she's not trying to make hits. And, she's making alt pop music. This is not like quote unquote mainstream pop music. But man, these are bangers to me. I think just you have really good synths all the time. She has very interesting vocals in the way her vocals are mixed. The very consistent use of vocoder effects on her vocals, sometimes just straight up auto-tune. It is, I think, really engaging sonics in the pop space. And also, probably most importantly, her songwriting ability is quite paramount. She cited Phoebe Bridgers as an influence. You can certainly see it. You can certainly hear it. And I think the fact that she has some really earnest, personal writing combined with very interesting musical choices, I'm certainly very invested and curious about what's next for Holly Humberstone, because I think this is a huge launching off point here. Just kind of going through these songs. I think the first song, Into Your Room, second song, Into Your Room, man, this one has a banger chorus. I love this track. I love the beat, love the guitar, I love the drums. I think her vocal performance is just very interesting. And I think a lot of these songs are really well executed on, where even though it's clearly very dubbed, they're almost like layered vocals at times. And of course the vocoder effects and auto-tune, these songs really latch on to you, and there's earworm elements to them. Cocoon, the guitar, the drums, the way the tempo builds up. I love this one. Ghost Me, probably the most up-tempo song on the album, definitely stands out for that. Super Blood Moon, a duet with David, a big TikTok, a rising TikTok star. That one's a bit more downbeat. It's interesting switch up there, but I still like it. Antichrist, perhaps a bit understated compositionally, but Holly's performance on that is really impressive. Lauren, gosh, this might be the best songwriting on the album. It's a really personal song about kind of losing a friend, due to being unable to keep in contact with everything going on. Really punchy songwriting. I think it's just really impressive, but also it hits. It's a fun song to listen to, despite the fact that it has I think a really clear message. Baby Blues, that's the most auto-tuney of them all, but I like it. And then you have the hit. I think this is clear highlight of Paint My Bedroom Black. That would be the song Flatlining, which is the production at its most electronic, its most distorted, almost gives you a feeling of static when you listen to it. Man, I think the way this song sounds combined with the feeling and the emotion in the performance and in the writing, very interesting. Clearly, Holly Humberstone has definitely a lot of vision for the kind of sound she wants to have, but also she really stands out for doing that. So Flatlining, that's on my best of 2023 Spotify playlist. Make sure you follow that. See the link below. Huge highlight. And yeah, she's not immediately ascending to superstardom like Olivia Rodrigo did a few years ago. She's not at that level, nor is she trying to be. But I think there's hits here, and I would not be shocked to see something take off very soon. And even if it doesn't, she clearly has all the opportunity in the world now to make the kind of music she wants to make. I think she's a very interesting artist. Again, so young. So that's very exciting to have, I think, someone pretty fully baked already as an interesting pop artist. So Holly Humberstone, let me know how you felt about her debut album, Paint My Bedroom Black. And for more music reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Troye Sivan's third album, Something to Give Each Other. There's a lot to get into with this album, and I love this album. I think this is one of the best albums of 2023. Almost certainly going to make my top 10 albums of the year. A lot to get into with this. Love the record. And I got to say, Troye Sivan has had such an impressive year, and I did not really see this coming because I was not really a Troye Sivan fan at all until this year. I had not really been much of a fan of his previous work. His last album back in 2018. It's been a while since we had a lot from Troye. Perhaps interestingly, between albums, we got that brief EP from Troye a few years ago, which was kind of the breakup EP. He kind of got the breakup songs off his chest in that EP. And as a result, with Something to Give Each Other, he was able to give us a really impressive, cohesive sonic vision for an album with a lot of amazing songs. And I just never really saw this coming from Troye. And it's really exciting. And really, it's continuing the great year he's had, because he was actually probably the best part of The Idol on HBO. You know, you think about that series, and I reviewed the series at length, check that out. But just think about who was involved with that series. Of course, The Weeknd in a starring role alongside Troye Sivan and also Jennie Kim from Blackpink. Without a shadow of a doubt, Troye Sivan was the best musical actor on The Idol on HBO. I don't even think it's debatable. He was great. And to follow that up with the debut single from this album, Rush, the moment I heard Rush, I was like, hold on a minute. Troye has not given us anything this interesting. And I think what's so great about Something to Give Each Other is that Troye Sivan, I think, has found a way to give you interesting, compelling, engaging music without, I think, kind of obviously pointing out the fact that he's not the best singer. He does not have the strongest vocals. But if the rest of the music is interesting, then it doesn't matter if his vocals are so-so. That was my biggest takeaway and, sticking point with his earlier work, was I thought the production that he was often on didn't do him any favors, and he just didn't really stand out vocally. Nowadays, with Something to Give Each Other, you have, a song like Rush, straight up house production? On top of that, you have this homoerotic chant vocals with the chorus, incredibly high tempo. Obviously a huge music video that's been polarizing in certain aspects, but certainly attention grabbing. Rush is just, it's a straight up pop banger, and Troye really fits his strengths on this. And I think what's so cool about this record, where, Troye is getting into, I think, obviously a song like Rush is just straight up very lustful. Of course, he's talked about the inspiration at length. And in general, I think desire and lust and, pursuing fun and also just finding connection, that's kind of a central theme on Something to Give Each Other. And it's boiled down, it's packaged to you with, again, very interesting production choices. Rush is straight up house. The second song, What's the Time Where You Are, also pretty clubby. I think this is one you could just straight up drop into a club and it would hit really fun. I love the drums on this. The Troye baby ad lib that gets dropped in as if it's like a DJ tag sounds awesome. I think this is a song that just kind of makes you move. I really like these first two tracks. And then you have One of Your Girls, where Troye's vocals are incredibly distorted, but you still have all this bass. And then the production, you have, just uncredited synths from none other than Max Martin. Unsurprisingly, a very catchy melody. And lyrically, kind of interesting. Of course, of Troye kind of pursuing romantically someone who's not usually into men. Pretty interesting writing, I'd say. And then we'll keep it going here. Still Got It. The organ. You got Troye Sivan singing with church organ backing him up. It's kind of epic. I can't lie. I love the way the guitar comes in at the end. It sounds great. In My Room, really fun drum tempo on that one. Can't Go Back, Baby. Probably just kind of a middling song. It's interesting. This album, it's pretty short, right? It's 10 songs, 33 minutes. It definitely goes up, comes back down, and then goes back up again. I think when Troye goes down, again, he gets a little less interesting, and Can't Go Back, Baby, production-wise, is probably the least involved of these songs, so there's not a lot to latch onto, I would say. But that thought quickly leaves your mind because you get Got Me Started, which very obviously in your face samples Shooting Stars from Bag Raiders. One of the, I think, most ubiquitous, EDM drops, especially in the TikTok and social media era. And it speeds up that sample. And Troye, from the performance side of things, gives you a very catchy auto-tune performance. I think this one's really awesome. Again, kind of fits that overall vision of the songs we've been getting to this point. It's the song Silly. I love the vocal performance from Troye, the different inflections he does with his voice. Very powerful bass, because that is just straight up a UK garage song. We haven't heard that from Troye Sivan. It's really cool to get something like that, something like Rush, really dabbling in a lot of, I think, interesting music here. Honey, also straight up house production. And then How to Stay With You, the last song, love the snares on it. And at the very end, you get basically like a jazz outro. Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of over the moon for this album. I think you have a clear-cut banger that you can listen to all the time in Rush. You have just really interesting layered beats, layered choices, and you have an artist clearly coming into his own musical identity and being incredibly confident in the vision, in the musical choices. And I just think that's really exciting. This is definitely going to make my top 10 albums of the year. And again, not something I ever saw coming, that I would adore a Troye Sivan album from the music we had gotten to this point. Very impressive. Hats off to Troye. But let me know, how did you feel about Troye Sivan's third album, Something to Give Each Other? And for more music reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Bad Bunny's fifth album, Nadie Sabe Lo Que Va a Pasar Mañana, aka Nobody Knows What Will Happen Tomorrow. Album 5 from Benito. Bunny said he was taking the year off, but like many artists at the very top, it is hard to stay away. Another full-length album. He just announced a brand new stadium tour for 2024. Bad Bunny's back. And of course, we know he's had a big year. Involved, of course, in wrestling. Now dating Kendall Jenner. Had, only the most streamed album of all time on Spotify last year with Un Verano Sin Ti, his complete commercial breakthrough album from a global sense. Of course, Bad Bunny has been, making noise and breaking records for a while now. Of course, a few albums back was the first #1 album in the US, all in Spanish. Un Verano Sin Ti was the first album of the year nominee to be all in Spanish. Bad Bunny does not compromise his music, who he is, or how he makes his music, and yet he still is taking over the world. He makes everyone else compromise to work with him. That's exactly what we want to see from the democratization, the globalization of music on the global stage. Bad Bunny continues to do that for us. We love that. And right now, even though, again, to this point, he had not released anything this year, he's, only at 80 million plus monthly listeners on Spotify, number 4, behind only Drake, Taylor, and The Weeknd, esteemed company, to say the least. And yeah, I think, honestly, I'm pretty excited about Nadie Sabe, just because, to me, this is the Bad Bunny sound I'd like. This is Bad Bunny going back to his roots, going back to like X100 Pre, the first album, going back to his original sound. This is Bad Bunny returning to Latin trap and like hard reggaeton, and it's not as palatable and pop leaning as some of Un Verano Sin Ti was. I think Un Verano Sin Ti, obviously a great album, a massively popular album, but songs like, Titi Me Pregunto and El Acabon, for example, or, songs like Titi Me Pregunto and El Apagón and, Moscow Mule, Después de la Playa, like, those are, lighter songs. Because that's the kind of music he made on that. And of course, he became the biggest artist in the world as a result of that. But to me, it's cool that he wants to go back and kind of return to that early roots sonically. But it's not a complete retreat, because Bad Bunny still is actually doing some new things on this album towards the end of the track list, which I think is really exciting. So overall, I think it's definitely a bloated album. It's long, 22 songs, an hour and 21 minutes. You could have cut a ton of this album, but there are some big highlights for me on this. Right off the bat, the title track, the lead track, Nadia Sabe, stands out because it's over 6 minutes long. It's kind of this like opening treatise where Bunny is talking about uh, his life and how he kind of feels about things in general. He is not afraid to get a little bit negative, talk a little spicy on this album, and basically flip off the haters. It's pretty fun. Track 2, Monaco, which had been released a little while ago. This is a Latin trap banger. This shit hard. I think this song is great. Following that up, you have Fina featuring Young Miko. And Young Miko be spitting, man. Again, another banger. This is Bunny leaning into his most hip-hop friendly music. And again, bringing you back to the trap. I think it's really fun. I like Habiki, pulsing bass, just a straight-up hard reggaeton song. Really enjoy it. Cybertruck, the same kind of thing. VOW 787. That one is cool because he's sampling Madonna's Vogue and has, I think, my favorite line in the album where he says, "I don't speak in English." The only time he speaks English on the album. Really funny. But I think that song's good. Baby Nueva, I love the bass. Los Pits, I like the bass. Very bouncy on that one. Vaticano, I like the drums. Where She Goes. This is one of the interesting songs. This is something new. This is Bad Bunny riding on a Jersey club beat. Obviously, Jersey club production is more in vogue in a mainstream sense today than it was before Drake brought it back with Honestly Nevermind, a year and a half ago. But still cool to hear Bad Bunny, of all people, sing in Spanish, rap in Spanish on Jersey Club. Pretty cool. Thunder y Lightning, featuring the Puerto Rican rapper Eladio Carrion. Man, this shit's hard. This shit's so hard. They are trading bars. It sounds so cool. And it's not just Latin trap. This is drill. This is Bad Bunny's first drill song. Again, it's super exciting to hear him do something new. And unsurprisingly, Bad Bunny, very credible on drill beats. Very cool. Love it. I think from there, the album kind of fades out a little bit. I think Acho PR, collabing with a bunch of his Puerto Rican OGs. Very cool. Nice gesture for sure. But yeah, I think this is kind of destined to not really get as big as, Un Verano Sin Ti. That being said, Where She Goes is already over 500 million streams, having come out earlier in the year. I think that says something, for sure. Bad Bunny is also basically too big to fail at this point. This is why he is putting out music now, even though he said he's going to take a year off. He's kind of in the Drake sense of things right now, where he wants to kind of feed the streets. Pretty interesting. Also, I think Spanish music, Latin music in the West, globally, moves very quickly. I think, as people know, Peso Pluma is having a gigantic year out of Mexico. Corridos tumbados becoming increasingly in vogue. Bad Bunny, not too long ago, was the young upstart bringing Latin music to the masses in an interesting way critically. Of course, there's other, he has peers, right? But, he kind of disses on this album J Balvin, right? He says, J Balvin, who wants to be friends with everybody, however he says it. Balvin has not been interesting critically, I don't want to say ever, but in a long time, because he just makes really vanilla, bland pop music. Bad Bunny, despite his popularity, is nowhere close to that. Doing new things on this, making a Jersey Club song, making a drill song, deciding to go back and remind you that he still can go hard on Latin trap beats and make just pure reggaeton shit. Bad Bunny's got it. I think it's really cool to, be in this place where someone like Peso Pluma can absolutely explode, and he's doing very different things from what Bad Bunny is doing now in a very mainstream, technically, fashion, even if the music itself isn't traditionally mainstream. Very interesting. I'm sure we'll be hearing more from Bunny very soon because, I don't know, I'm kind of putting him in the bucket now where he is struggling to get away due to his fame. And maybe that's good for us. We'll see if the art suffers overall. Again, it's a bloated album, but there's so many highlights on this that I really can't be too critical of it. So shout out Bad Bunny, his 5th album, Nade Sabe. Let me know, how'd you feel about this one? How'd you compare it to Un Verano Sin Ti? Again, a very different, genre expression, a return back to the old roots. How'd you feel about Bunny bringing it back? How do you feel about his new dalliances towards the end of the track list? And for more music reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. All right, that's going to do it for the pod this week. All music this week. Next week, we will rectify that with a ton of movies to get into. I'm really happy about this one. So music coming next week as well. New album, Sampha. Very excited about that, as well as Michi Darko from Flatbush Zombies and 17 on the K-pop side of things. But man, we got some movies to talk about. Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon. Need I say more? New Chinese blockbuster from Zhang Yimou, Under the Light, his 2nd film of the year after Full River Red, one of the biggest blockbusters and highest grossing movies of 2023. And then I'm going to the Independent Film Festival of Boston. So I'm seeing 3 films in early release. Monster from Koreeda. I'm a big fan of his movies. His last movie, Broker, was in my top 10 films of 2022. Also seeing Evil Does Not Exist, the new film from Ryusuke Hamaguchi. His last film, Drive My Car, 2 years ago, was my number 2 film of 2021. Absolutely adore that movie. And also, I'll be seeing The Boy and the Heron, the new Studio Ghibli movie from Hayao Miyazaki, which is not out in normal release until December 8th. Very excited to get into that one. So, a lot of movies and music as well next week. Make sure you subscribe. youtube.com/nostalgiapod, linktree.com/nostalgiapod. Get the pod any way you can. Just make sure you get it. See links below for the best of 2023 Spotify playlist, and I'll see you next week.